Morning, folks. Today we're going to be continuing on some of the API work that we were doing yesterday. We did about an hour and a half live stream yesterday where we were looking at some things about our API and working on changing some of our front end code to hook into some API stuff. Let me just show you very quickly where we left off. Essentially, we left off here. We were trying to get museum roles for projects, and we were finding that that wasn't working for us. We know that we have a project called multi-answer question test project, which is supposed to, for which the user that we're logged in as is supposed to have museum access. However, what we were seeing was that that attribute remained undefined for all of our projects, including multi-answer question test project. The reason that it's undefined is that currently we're returning, pardon me, when we try to get the museum roles right now, let me show you where we're doing that. Find usages. Okay. So we have our museum mode call. We're trying to get the information about whether each project is in museum mode. We make that call and we find that we're not getting the information because when we make that call, we're expecting to see returned this action and modification on our project, but that's not happening because we have this each through that we're doing on the project roles because a project can have multiple different project roles in its links JSON. We're seeing get avatars for projects work by contrast because the thing that we're mapping over is the modification that we're making. And here we're mapping over the projects. But then we go through and do this for each. And then this modification would be happening once for each of those individual things. Furthermore, the return value of for each, if I'm not mistaken, is undefined. Let's check. We could also test this in a console or something. So it looks like for each does in fact mutate the current array. That doesn't tell us the return value. Let's check. This is from 2016. Okay, so for each itself isn't returning a value. So what we need to do here is figure out how we want this to work. Now there are a couple of different things that we could do here. One of them is to create some kind of variable on the outside of this, right? And let's say we could do, for example, we could initialize a variable here. Here, we'll just pseudocode this for now. And then in here, we could do modify project in museum. And then we could return the project again out here. So that's an option that we have. In fact, let's go ahead and give that a try. Let's do this. And then let's do project.inMuseumMode equals. So now we're saying that every project is not in museum mode. And then we want to loop through and ensure that museum mode is true for the projects for which it is supposed to be true. And so here, we want this to be if any of these loops, if this is true for any of these loops, then we want this value to be set to true. So right now what it's going to do is every time it loops through, so let's say we have project.inMuseum mode, it's false, right? And then we go through some project roles where the project, where the role is like museum owner. For that one, this is going to be true, and in museum mode is going to be set to true. Then let's say that the next one is expert. This is going to get set back to false. So the way that our code is currently written depends on the one that says museum falling last in the array that we're eaching through. So the way that we can change that is that we can change this to true if any of those roles include museum. So we can do something like this. All right, let's give that a go. So everything's set to false right now. So that means that our true isn't taking. So we have roles.includes museum. Let's do something. I suspect that this is getting called and this is a scoping issue. So we are seeing change being made happening. So this modification is getting made, but then it's not sticking for museum mode. So we go through the links, and for each one, we have our individual project, right? And in museum mode is getting set. Now we can take a look. There's one other thing that's interesting here, which is the order of these calls, right? So we have all these print statements happening up here where the promises have finished. But then after that, we're seeing all of these calls being made. So the museum mode calls that we're looping through are happening after the point where we need the change to be made. So I'm going to propose that we do something a little bit different here, and it's going to resolve two problems that we have. The first one is this one. And then the second one is that currently, the way that we're doing this is not particularly performant. Now, performance is generally my last concern when it comes to first stage application development. And that's not to say that it's not important, but rather that there are a number of factors that go into performance, including how easy that code is to change for a developer and how important the performance gain is in terms of the way that the code runs. So if it's going to make code convoluted and confusing for me to speed it up by a couple of milliseconds, I need to know that those milliseconds are really important. So that kind of performance change you may have heard me talk about in the past. In this particular case, we're looking at a little bit of a different performance concern. In this case, we're not talking about the running of code. We're talking about returning a value from an external API. When an app is slow, this can be one of the things that takes the longest. Very frequently, calls are taking the vast majority of the time as opposed to some code running in the app itself. So in this example, what we're going to end up doing is for every single role ID in the project roles, we're going to make the same project roles call, and then we're going to do this same operation over and over for however many project roles there are. Now, what I would prefer here is if there were a way to make an API call only once, such that I'm not blocked on several API calls running synchronously in order to be able to finish my operation, and they would run synchronously because for each is looking for something synchronous to happen, and so each of these needs to return. Okay, so instead of doing all this, here's what I propose. Rather than going through the project roles like this, what I would like to do, pardon me, is to take this out. So rather than eaching through, we're going to make one API call, and then here we're going to search for all the IDs at once, like so. And then for each of these roles, so we're going to map through. Now we're going to get project roles. We're going to get anybody with an ID that appears inside of those project roles. And then for each of the individual roles, we want to get, so these are going to be roles. We'll put the each in here. Right? And now put this up one. Roles for each. And then for each role, we want to see if it includes museum. Let's do this. Let's see how that does. Let's not set this back to false. For each individual project, we're going through the roles. Sorry, it's like tough to talk and code and think and type at the same time. I think I'm running into a little bit of that this morning. All right, so we got our project roles, and then for the roles, let's start here. Let's just get an idea of what we're getting back to make sure that this is working properly, because it's kind of a big assumption that this is working. One step at a time. All right, so here we go. We have these roles. And each role then has roles. Okay, good to know. And we want to know that any of them includes museum. Hmm? All right, we have our roles, and so if one of them includes museum, then that's going to get set to true. But it's going to keep getting set again to true and false depending as we iterate through this. So we want to make sure that for any given one, like this can get set to true if any of them contain museum, right? So we can take a look, for example, at the one where we know one of them contains museum. So we have owner and museum here, right? So All right. So this will get set to false if there's one that doesn't contain it, and it'll get set to true if there's one that does contain it. Cool, so we're getting true here. And this keeps getting set back to undefined if it wasn't defined first. So let's do this. I don't know that we want to leave it this way. Where'd it go? Maha. All right, so now we've got this working. So let's take a look at our code real quick. Now that we have something working, let's commit. Let's do modify projects to include in museum mode attribute if one of the roles for the current logged in user includes the museum label. Now recall, we're not going to leave this message like this when we merge it up and in. But we do want to be able to commit at a working state so that we can then refactor without fear. So what would you refactor about this? I'll let you pause this here. I'm going to get some water real quick, and then we'll come back and look at it. Alrighty. And we're back. Okay, so as we're looking at this, we've got this map. We have this API client, get and then. And now we're looking at this. And the way that this is working, we initialize to false. And then for each role, we either keep this false or change it to true if roles includes museum. We needed to include this line earlier because project to in museum mode was starting out as undefined. And then if it was, if we never ran into true, then it stayed undefined because we kept assigning this back. Right? Now, here's what I'm going to recommend that we do instead. And this is a little bit of a trick. So if we switch the order of these, something slightly different is going to happen. Now, if in museum mode is undefined, this is going to evaluate to false, at which point we're going to pass the OR marker, and in museum mode is going to be set to role.roles.includes museum, which will be either true or false because the includes method returns a boolean. That means that the first time this runs, project.inmuseum mode will be set to a boolean, either true or false. The second time we run through, if InMuseum mode is true, it will stop at the OR. This won't get evaluated. Oh, uh-oh. If, however, it's false, then we'll continue past the OR and once again evaluate role.roles.includes_museum, which will again evaluate to either true or false. So by switching the value of these two items, we should be able to eliminate our initialization up there. Let's see if we're right. Uh-oh. There we go. All right, it looks like we are. False, 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 false. And then the moment of truth, does this come back true? And it does. So this is good. So we've done one thing that helps out a little. We also talked yesterday about a refactor that we wanted to do. We started making this refactor list. I like to keep refactor lists while I'm working so that I can keep track of any failure modes I notice and come back to things that I think require a little bit more attention without breaking the main thrust of what I'm doing and allowing me to get to green as quickly as possible. So we only have one thing on our refactor list right now. Make sure all JSON keys are in snake case. We came to that because InMuseum mode was in camel case. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that snake case. Let's do InMuseum mode. And in fact, let's use our renaming thing. Oh, it's not going to be able to get it right now. Whoa, what happened? Let's try again. Cool. So now we have snake case there. So now we can check this item off our refactor list. We'll keep it there in case we come across more refactors later. So now let's go take a look at our change list again. Uh-oh. I bet InMuseum mode got changed for all these calls, and that's not what we wanted. Let's undo that rename. Whew. We literally just want this JSON key to change. All right, let's do one more cool trick. And then if this doesn't work, we'll stop. G. All right. Let's replace all those like this. All right, that's better. So now if we come down here and take a look at our changes, it's that snake case, and then the removal of this, the switching of these two operands. That should be it, actually. Let's do one other thing. We're not using any of this in here, so let's remove those imports. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to amend the previous commit. And let's do this. Let's say determine so now we determine at fetch time whether project should be in museum mode. Commit that up. And now we're ready to move on to our next step. So our next step is going to be using this information. And we could see an example of that in our multi-answer classifier, right? So currently we use this.props.project.toString everywhere. Essentially everywhere in the project where we do project.toString, we're going to want to change it to project.inmuseum mode. So we're going to do something a little bit gutsy here. But first, we're going to make sure that it's going to go right. I want to do a batch replace of all of these strings. If this string, here's the risk here. If this string is getting used somewhere that isn't to key off whether something is in museum mode or not, then I could potentially break something in the app. So I'm going to look at these and make sure that they appear, that they all are what I expect them to be. So in this one, we're assigning in museum mode. This one, we're assigning colors, so I know this is museum mode related. In museum mode, also using color mode, so this is for museum mode 2. Museum mode, colors, museum mode, colors, colors. Museum mode, museum mode, museum mode, museum mode, colors, museum mode, colors. Perfect. All right, so here we go. I'm going to escape out of this, and I'm going to do Command-Shift-R, batch replace. And I'm going to put this.props.in museum mode. No, I'm not. I'm going to do this. What did we just change this to? In museum mode. Does that look right? All right, ready? Here we go. Yes, replace 19 occurrences. Boom. All right, so here's what we're going to expect to see now. We're going to expect to see light theme for all of the not museum mode projects. We're going to see a dark theme for our one museum mode project. In museum mode is missing props validation. And that's true. We're going to see this in a couple places. Across all 4 files. But this is what we're going to want in all those places. In the multi-answer classifier, in the drawing classifier, in the single question. Well, as a matter of fact, you know what? We can go down here and we can look at what files changed and do it in all those places. But do. I'm going to put it below display name everywhere. I don't know. Those two, they just feel like friends to me. I feel like they'd want to be together. Where's our prop types? Here we go. All right, we don't. Oh, yeah, we do have display name right there. They're just similar things. They're attributes on the project. Which is why I feel like they belong together. I'm not too worried about the order of the prop types. It's worth paying attention to, for sure. What the? But what have I done? I'm not sure why this is like this. All right. Let's run it and see how we do. Okay, so first, let's go to something that's not our multi-answer question test project. Stellar Watch. And it's the light theme. It's got a terrifying red testing background, so we'll fix that. In fact, I have a funny feeling I know where that is. This is not what I wanted. I don't know why I did that. There we go. I have a feeling this is set somewhere it's not supposed to be. Yeah, what the heck? Alright. This is why it's very important to check all your commits before you commit them to like make sure that you're not leaving anything accidentally in there. You can leave stuff in whip commits, but when you're going to take the whip off, it's time to like check that stuff. What the heck? Let's check it again. It should not be this color in any of these places. Alright, let's try again. Now it seems like I'm going through and changing this styling a little bit fast. I'm accustomed to this app. If you're working on an app that you were new to, I would highly recommend slowing that one down. Alright. Better. I think this is supposed to be a light gray, actually. I need to check the color on the designs of this, but in the meantime, we want to get our thing working. Beautiful. Alright, so I'm going to come back and take a closer look at that. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and make another change list. And this time, do I have Markdown? I guess I could come up here and try. Oh my god. No Markdown? Fine. Sweet. Alright. Leave no stone unturned, right? Alright, so now let's look at our multi-answer question test project. For some reason, this is in light theme now. Why? Why is this in light theme? Because multi-answer classifier, this.props.in museum mode, which should get set in projects. Let's take another look at this and check our print statements. Alright, so we've got it getting set to true. Let's see where it's getting passed through. I'm going to remove this so we don't leave it in there by accident. Where are we using in here? That's the only place? So in museum mode here, should be set to true, but it isn't. We might potentially make that snake case too. Let's make sure that in museum mode is only serving as a component property and not getting expected to be JSON. Looks like it's right. Ah, here's the problem. This is supposed to be this.props.project.inMuseum mode. It's not on there, so it's getting classified as... So it's undefined. It's evaluating to false because we didn't do the right thing. Sweet. This is why I need y'all commenting, so I don't make silly mistakes like that one. This is comment box. This is where you get to be the silly mistake police. Alright, let's try again. Boom, light theme. Boom, museum mode. Kids, adults, and people in between, we have done it. We have successed. Let's check a couple more. Rock on. I don't know why we just went to that one again. Woo! It's beautiful. All right. So once again, this change I kind of want to make in a separate commit. So let's put that on our change list. Change list. Okay, so find the true background color for normal, not dark theme. All right, so in order to do this, we're going to go over to our InVision thing. So this is where we keep all of our designs for the application. Here we go. So here's our color, right? Boom. Apparently it's called white smoke. That's cool. And this dropper, I know that InVision contains tools for you to get all of the assets and all of that stuff. They recently changed their UI, and so I have found it easier to use these dropper tools that I've I've grandfathered in these dropper tools because I've used the dropper tools on other design implementations before, and it's just as fast. But you could easily do that in InVision as well. Boom, boom. All right, let's check our work. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm going to say let's go ahead and look at our, so let's go to our change list and take that off. I don't know why these are numbered. They don't really need to be numbered. And now, let's look at our changes. We changed the background color to be the appropriate background color. And we changed all of these references from the stringified project name to the actual attribute for whether the project is in museum mode. So that's exciting. What is this problem here? Missing props validation. We did add props validation. Let's come back and figure that one out. So all of these have been changed. These ones, it doesn't seem to mind the I wonder why it likes the props validation there, not on the other one. That's weird. We're going to come back to that. Take out this print statement. Never should have been put in there. You didn't see anything. Beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this. And this time we are going to say switch between dark and light theme based on project museum mode attribute. Let's say switch themes, switch color themes based on project museum mode attribute. Switch. Beautiful. Currently, dark theme is only for museums. So the reason I'm putting this in here is because the fact that dark mode is only for museums on our mobile app is a departure from our web front end where anybody can choose to put it in dark or light theme. Beautiful. All right, so JSON keys in snake case, not camel case. I'm actually gonna defer that, and rather than go on like a mission to find all of our camel case and snake case attributes, if we run across them, we'll change them. So needs tutorial here. This is not a property that comes from JSON. It is an attribute on the component itself. And so we do want that to be in camel case. So I misspoke earlier. So I'm going to call this one good for now. Now there was one thing we wanted to look at. Drawing classifier, which was that in museum, so we were seeing this project.inMuseum mode is missing props validation. Perhaps I put it in the wrong spot. Yeah. Check it out. We have it in project here. That's nice. That should remove the problem, the issue. But it makes sense, right? We want to make sure that that specific thing that came from project has the right type. All right, it's happy now. Cool. Let's go back through and do a quick check on that specific thing in the other classifiers too. Yeah, see, it wants it in project on this one too. So let's pull this out of here and go and do project. Ba-ba-da-bum-bum. So that's the swipe classifier, the drawing classifier. We have less the question classifier and the multi-answer classifier. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-bum. Here we don't appear to have it in a... So here it would really make sense to have project in museum mode. So let's do this. Boom. Get rid of this. I really think we only need to check some of this stuff once. I'm going to leave display name in there twice for now because it's in there twice in the others, but I don't necessarily want to leave it like that. Like, where all is display name used in this file? There. Literally only on project. Okay, I'm getting rid of that. I'm calling it, people. Do we do it here too? Yeah. I think we do it everywhere. Goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye. Alright, that's getting there. So now we should have just changed those 4 classifiers, yeah. Let's run it one more time just for verification. Sweet. That one is in the light theme, and this one is in the dark theme. That's great. You'll also notice that we're no longer getting that big host of warnings about how we're evaluating a string based like it's a boolean. So that's good. We also want to remove all of these, like every single one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight switching to night mode, Command-Shift-F, I'm going to find them all. And then let's do Command-Shift-R and replace them with an empty string. Across one files with... Ooh, this might be a bad idea. I should commit before I do this, but I'm not going to. We're just going to see if it worked. Alright, let's look through our changes here. So we made these changes to validation. Couple little formatting changes. That's good. Beautiful. 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 So now let's do this. Let's run one last time. I just like to make sure. So we took out all of our extraneous printing, which is good. We fixed our prop validation, which is good. And so what we should be left with now is relatively clean functional code. Great. So let's commit this. Adjust props validation for project in museum mode. And let's also say that may seem like a silly thing to include, but I do want to ensure that if anybody is tracing this commit later and they see that that stuff got removed, I've made it crystal clear that that stuff was like not a part of the core functionality that was changed. You can be amazed how much being explicit like that can be helpful to other developers in the absence of the context that you might provide with your presence. So now let's take a look at our commits. Why can't I remember this? Thank you. I don't know why that was so difficult just then. All right, so we have our commits here. All right. Adjust validation, switch colors, determinate fetch. Good, so our 3 commits together now, they tell a story, right? Determinate fetch time, whether the project should be in museum mode. Switch colors theme based on project museum mode attribute. And adjust props validation for project in museum mode. That's good. This one is not super clear, so I'm going to go ahead and do I'm going to adjust the wording of this a little. Okay, switch. Let's do use project museum mode attribute to determine app colors. I think that's going to be better. Let's look again at our one-liners here. Okay, determine at fetch time whether project should be in museum mode. Use project museum mode attribute to determine app colors. Adjust props validation for project.inMuseum mode. Okay, this I like better. So here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and push up our commits. And what I'll do is in the description and in the show notes, I will include a link to this PR and to the commits that we have made so that you can go in and review the code yourself. So over the past couple days, we've done a few things. First, we explored the Zooniverse API with a couple of different techniques. We looked at the documentation, we looked at a couple of pieces that have been written on it, and then we also took a look at an HTTP client for non-authenticated calls. We talked a little bit about some troubles I've been having with authenticated calls for that. And so we looked in addition at some more methods for exploring our API, including taking a look at the way that our API clients are implemented, and then writing code in the client app itself in order to learn more about the kinds of things that are coming back from our calls. Then after we did that, we started making some changes to some logic that we've done in a previous live stream based on the new API information that we're getting back. In order to do that, we got a couple of opportunities to see some different techniques for debugging, which I think is also helpful. And then at the end, we started keeping and then knocking down incrementally a list of changes and refactors that we wanted to make so that we could stay on a path to our end goal without getting distracted while simultaneously not forgetting things that we noticed in the meantime. So I hope that this was helpful. And then in the next live stream, hopefully we'll get a look at some even more interesting discovery and refactoring methods that will allow us to take logic like this and make it perhaps a little more elegant and perhaps a little bit more performant from a code speed perspective as well. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you are too.